I like that because rather than doing the bio and all that stuff like that, just like I don't need to tell everyone you're good. Like you can show them like how good you are. Right?
Sorry.
I have faith in you. Go.
If the U.S. were to crumble, would Americans jump over their own borders and flock the streets of Mexico City? Would they seek refuge in Darfur or Somalia? Our perceptions on immigration would change very quickly. If the Minutemen or Donald Trump were to cross the desert, they would probably die from sunburn. Our brown skin is proof of survival. It is a battle wound from our journeys to this country. Would you pray to Lord Tezcatlipoca for a darker shade of skin or a wider set of feet? Have you ever been so thirsty that your throat turned into the parchments politicians write racist laws onto? If Obama's children were stripped from him and deported over to Kenya, he would have banned SB 1070 at once. He would regret not teaching them the native tongue and never bothering to learn it himself. He would curse his government for allowing their skin to become lighter behind the shadows of the White House. Do you think he would trust his daughters' lives in the hands of a coyote? Would you? If the sounds of stomachs rumbling reminded you of bullets, would you be afraid of hunger? If your children cried for food, would you steal a piece of bread for them? If you have answered yes to any of these questions, then why would you blame anybody for coming to America? All we seek is food and shelter. So break bread, motherfuckers. It's not like we weren't the ones who baked it for you in the first place. Can you see the immigrant bones that your homes have been built with? Where the countertops made from their spines and kitchens where too many immigrants have touched your food to call it American? Do you still call this a home? Have we forgotten that the pilgrims crossed over on boats? So tell me, who are the wetbacks now? If the sun and the moon slide through our borders every day without showing a visa, then why should we have to? If a person is not welcomed in their home or anyone else's, does this make them nomadic? Do you think people enjoy being pushed out their own homes? Do you think they leave for no reason? Do you know what it feels like when both of the languages on your tongue try conquering each other? Tienes miedo cuando hablamos español. Does it frighten you when we speak in Spanish? Pero te da más miedo cuando hablamos en inglés. But it frightens you more when we speak in English. Esta siempre será nuestra tierra. And no, we will not translate that. But I will translate this. Humano, human. Binatabu, human. Mensch, human. Mandia, human. Daritsan, human. Kaanika, human. Bila Ashla E, human. Let them eat. Let them eat. Let them eat. There you go. Snap, snaps.
All forms and all rounds of applauses. Man, I'm really glad. I'm really honored to be joined here with you today. To the audience who might not know, we are joined today by Jozer. Jozer, how do you say this? Am I messing this up? I'm messing.
Jozer? Yeah, Jozer.
Jozer. Okay, Jozer Guerrero. I want to make sure I'm saying that right. All right, so Jozer, you and I met at the Lalo Delgado Poetry Festival. Is that correct? In Denver, right?
Yes, sir. Crazy
That's
that you
right.
mentioned that. I think that was supposed to happen last week. Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting thing because I know that you were a slam champion, as well as participating in this Lalo Delgado thing. Now, the Lalo Delgado, for those who might not know, is considered like one of the really uh, kind of legends of Chicano poetry, one of the godfathers of all of Chicano poetry, and certainly there in Denver. Um, so it's really interesting. You kind of you're involved in the kind of more literary poetry scene and the kind of the history of Denver poetry of the Chicano scene and also the slam scene. So how do you find yourself bridging those kind of those two worlds?
Uh it's interesting, man. When I first came into the poetry scene, I think I really realized that there was a really kind of a strict line in between some of those different scenes, right? And I didn't really understand it. I fell in love with the slam community because I was an athlete, you know, and I think that the competitive aspect of it was really kind of an attractive feature, but also because of hip hop, right? And it was like one of the closest things that we had here, really in Denver, like as far as like battles and stuff like that, right? And so I thought that was kind of a cool kind of concept and kind of combining the poetry and the hip hop ish in a way. But yeah, man, I don't know. I just kind of kept showing up. You know, I never really cared. You know, I there's it's kind of an interesting, weird build in the city that there it's already really racially segregated in different neighborhoods, and because of that, I think that for a long time the poetry community also reflected that. You know, we had this venue that is now gone, but it used to be called Cafe Cultura, which was primarily for Latino or to give I guess the Latino community a voice. And then there was also a slam called Slam Nuba, and which is still around, and also the Mercury Cafe. And Slam Nuba was literally created to be created for Black voices and a space for Black folks. And the Mercury Cafe was one of the original venues, but because it was kind of in the city, in the middle of the city, Capitol Hill is what we call it. It was pretty white primarily, at least the audience and the poets who were going through there. And me, man, I was just kind of obsessed with this like whole poetry thing, and I wanted to be able to read wherever I wanted, you know, and it became kind of like a test, you know, to be honest. I knew that if I could do really well at Slam Nuba and I could do really well at the Merc, then I had a pretty good universal poem that can kind of hit and impact and work in all of these different settings and all of these different, in this case, kind of demographics or racial backgrounds, or you know, whatever the audience was kind of built by. But it was interesting, man. And so yeah, I've kind of just never really cared. You know, I've definitely got some weird vibes, but I think that at the end of the day, the folks who are doing the booking, they were always kind of down to bring me in. I know
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, I get some funny faces when I'm in these like real literal spaces. But at the end of the day, you know, I think that it's almost like the whole movement is kind of going towards some sort of performance, and I think like this is a perfect example of it. Like we can't really, it's not as dynamic, you know what I'm saying? If you don't have really a dynamic reading, it's really easy to like to not really watch your video. You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
think like everybody could really benefit from having a few performance like, you know, elements in their reading, even if you are a really strong you know, a really solid writer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think definitely with you, and there's definitely there's a ton of content. So, I mean, you're writing about something. I mean, it's important stuff, right? So the content that you're writing about, you're not just writing about yourself. You're writing about the struggles of, millions of people. Like a whole community that
Yes,
you
sir.
represent. But I really there's something so fucking there's something very deeply Mexican about just showing up everywhere. I'm here to work, right? Uh,
Yeah.
I was very similar experience in Los Angeles. I mean, I was kind of like the token brown guy in a lot of places for a lot of different people, not just white folks. I mean, I was kind of the token Mexican dude at like Lamert Park Festival for a while. I was the token in little Tokyo. I didn't care. I mean, I didn't feel like a token anything. I felt like I was there, and I felt like I'm doing this thing, but it wasn't so much tokenized. It was more just like I was often the only one everywhere, but I didn't care. I mean, like, and that not caring was the most Mexican thing I could do.
Hey, you know, I think maybe the intention for them might have been tokenizing, but then, like, when you come into a space and you read a poem like that, they're like, "Ah, man, maybe we made a mistake," you know, and that's actually like it kind of balances it sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. But you are also part of the the very the Mexican core of Denver, the Chicano core of Denver, the spaces there that Well, you were working with that one playhouse or something, right? That one cultural center.
Yes, sir. Yeah. It's called Su Teatro. Su Teatro is probably, I think,
Legendary. A lot of history.
someone someone has said something as like one of the first three Chicano theater companies in the nation. It's been around for probably around a little over 60 years. Um, it's pretty impressive, man. I've been there since I was like 15 years old. It's kind of like my first job, really. They kind of gave me an internship. And I think that my family, they're Mexicanos. My family, we come from Juarez, and so I think that the idea of a Chicano, at some point there was definitely a division between Chicano and the Chicano, and that's a huge thing, and it's always been a huge thing here in Denver. And of course, it's divide and conquer, man. They divided our people even within our own people, based on language or what, etc. But so it was kind of hard to kind of like grasp the concept for a while, and mainly because my parents were kind of like, "Oh, don't you ever say you're a Chicano, right? Don't you ever call yourself that word? You know what that means," kind of thing. And I don't think they know they understood what that meant. You know what I'm saying? So I think that being a part of this theater company kind of allowed me to pursue, or to first of all to kind of be like a little bit more in touch with with my culture, or like it's especially like the Chicano movement and all of the things that happen. And then when you find out that all this rich history with the Chicano movement is in your city, right? With Corky and the Crusade for Justice and like all of these things, like there was bombings of schools here. You know what I'm saying? Like there was different riots. The police and the FBI got pretty violent with our people here, and so most of the time, I think even when I first moved here, because like I said, we're from Juarez, we kind of assumed that this was going to be kind of like a little cowboy town. You know what I mean? And it depicted it as in South Park. Like pretty pretty white place. But I think that most people get pretty shook when they come into the city. They realize that it's actually pretty diverse city. And then when you think about the Chicano presence, like it's still here and it's really strong, man. And it's like, we just got this library called the Corky Gonzalez Library. I think that finally the city's kind of honoring that. But for a long time, that story, that narrative wasn't really told. In especially in our city, in our state, and by our government and education. And we talked about Lalo Delgado. I think he was real pivotal in that as well, because he was paid by the city, right? He was our city's first poet laureate, and he was writing about all of these things, and that like it became a part of the government's writings. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't get away from that. It's part
Yeah.
of our history for sure. And I think we recently just got our first Colorado poet laureate, and it's Bobby Lefebvre, right, who is a Chicano here from north
Bobby.
of Denver. Bobby is now the poet laureate for the state of
Oh,
Colorado, and you know him, man. He's gonna write about the things. He's gonna question. He's gonna push buttons with his poetry. Do it very eloquently too, and
yeah.
very very classy. But he is gonna push some of those, and I think it's really cool to see that, because it kind of gives me hope in the sense like I bet like most of the poet laureates. I mean, the only poet laureate in Denver so far has been Brown. You know what I'm saying? Like we've had a few white poet laureates as well, but we've always been represented in the poetry scene as far as it is in Denver. And Su Teatro is a great place for that, man. It's just giving space for, I'm wearing the Neruda Poetry Festival, which is actually a t-shirt from Su Teatro. And we changed the name. It's called, it's called WordFest now, and we've kind of widened the whole concept. So we don't just have to do poetry; we do script readings as well. But we're kind of it's kind of a cool experience. Not only do we have a platform for poetry, it's also for film. We just finished our Chica Indie Film Festival, and we kind of switched over, because we do it live, but we actually did it through another kind of network like this, or a platform like this, where we are able to go live and live on our website and stuff like that. I mean, that's actually a pretty good success. You know, no one has nothing to do at home, so everybody tuned in and watched these Latino or Chicano films. You know, produced, written by, and acted by Chicanos and Latinos. So it was a cool festival. We have a music festival as well, and of course we have a full season of theatrical productions, and I get to be the lead facilitator and workshop facilitator. So I teach acting and I direct all of the young. We have a youth theater company as well called El Teatro Volarte, and so I get to kind of lead that and do a lot of work with the young people and kind of keep young people and this movement continuing, because we have noticed that there is an attack on the word Chicano, and also just on the Chicano experience, or like the love for that culture, and like
Yeah.
wanting to claim that word. So if we don't kind of continue to plant those seeds in our young people's minds, that's how they can be successful in defeating us. But that's never gonna happen, because we got our roots deep, man. We
Yeah,
ain't
yeah,
letting
that's
that
right.
go.
That's right. Yeah, no, there definitely was an attack. Really, last year was really heavy, and I kind of I looked at it and I was like, you know what, like I'm gonna like risk ending my career on this stuff, and I kind of was one of the people that really fought back against that. But it does my heart a lot good to hear that you're out there doing that, because the reality is if we don't regenerate this. I'm a few years older than you, but but it has to be regenerated. People even younger than I mean, even younger, it has to be regenerated. We have to create the next generation of ourselves, or this shit dies with us. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Or we just become old men talking about the way things used to be. That's a bad look.
Back in my day.
That's a bad look. But for those in the audience who might not know though, Denver, it was one of the leading places in Chicano struggle on many fronts. I mean, one of the biggest things I think about is with UMAS, which actually later became, Mecha and other things. I mean, things sprung out of UMAS, but like in Boulder, Colorado, people died. People died. Like you made reference to that. People died in Denver for the struggle for ethnic studies, and that's something that should never be forgotten. It should never be forgotten.
Yeah, man, it's nuts, and um, it's interesting. The university kind of for a long time they kind of really didn't really want to acknowledge this whole thing. It was extreme, man. This there was
Art
body
bombing.
parts at Chautauqua Park, which is about a mile away from the campus. Like,
Yeah.
uh, it spread everywhere, right? And then not to mention like just just the impact that it had on the community, the impact that it had on like future generations of students, and but then now the university finally kind of put like a mural, and they're kind of starting to kind of to acknowledge that this happened, and it's actually kind of interesting. It feels kind of, it stings a little bit, you know what I mean? Like it's almost like in their terms, but the movement and the group there has actually been pretty solid, man. It's been one of the strongest, I think, in the groups for a while, and as far as like consistency and like numbers, etc. So it's kind of, it's interesting. It definitely, the legacy of Los Seis de Boulder lives and is very present in that city, even though they try to, they try to get rid of that. It's still very. They even try to tear down the building, I believe, like the TBI or TB1 or whatever it was. Um, but I think that they can't erase that history. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of interesting to. You're right, and then you go up there now, and it's like, whoa, this happened here. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're walking through the halls, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm from LA, and so in LA, so much of a concept of the Chicano movement is basically the East Side, right? And
right,
and that's not just true here in LA. I mean, that's true throughout the national consciousness that like East LA is like where everything well, but that's and there's a proud history there. I mean, there's no denying there's a proud history there, but Denver is also a you know monumental struggles came out of Denver, and people know the name of Corky Gonzalez, but they don't necessarily know like, hey man, that happened in Denver. Like, and some people know. I mean, Los Diaz is that's not that needs to be a bigger. The consciousness of that needs to be expanded because not enough people do know about that. But those who do know, yeah, they know. But like, it's almost like it's incidentally in Colorado. Like, it's not like that happened there for a reason. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So people need to know. But let's hear another poem.
All right. Let's see. Go look through this old poetry book, man. I haven't been. I got you, man. I got you, man. Jose David Guerrero Chavez Galvan, get your ass inside this house. ¿Qué te dije la última vez, huh? What did I tell you last time? I remember hearing those words and my nalgas clenching like a pair of terrified chipmunks. It was time for a good old ass whooping. And my parents handed those out like the sky in Denver hands out snowstorms. My mother's cry was like thunder, cracking the night sky every time I gave her a reason to roar. Whoever said lightning never struck twice in the same place must have never felt my mama's hands. But it wasn't just the hands that did the damage. Oh no, see, my mother had the miraculous ability to transform any object into a weapon. So I watched her mold chanclas into machetes and hairbrushes, into grenades. These were our mannerism classes, lessons that I could recite like the back of my father's hands. See, he used to tell me he would hit me because he loved me. And I wish that at my age, he had parents who cared enough to whoop his ass when he did something wrong too. Now quit moving. You're only making it worse. This is gonna hurt me more than it's gonna hurt you. And I believed him every time he said that. I felt the salt in my father's tears splash the wounds he left on my back, and they still sting every time I hear my son cry. So today, I stand here looking at my scars and I ask myself if I want to be the one to give my son his first. And the answer is usually no. Because I know one day he's going to say something that's going to make me want to grab him by his big old ear. But I'll explain to him that in our neighborhoods, whoopings can sometimes feel warmer than a father's hug. And for all the parents out there dealing with the same dilemma, remember, life beats our kids enough as it is. So let's use our hands to help pull them back on their feet instead of beating them down. There it is. A poem is
Yeah.
called Whoopings.
No, I tend to empathize and agree. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So your style is very much influenced, though. You can definitely tell you have a theatrical background. So like how do you incorporate your? I mean, like how do you your performance style is definitely you definitely have I can tell you have a background in theater. I mean, you told me earlier, you told our audience you have a background in theater, but it definitely comes through in your work. So, how has bridging the gap between poetry and theater been? Or,
I you know what I think my first love was music, right? Like that's what I wanted to do, was to be like a musician, a frontman of a band, like and then I didn't really have the resources, man. I didn't have, my parents didn't really know how to play instruments, like, they might have like been down to buy a guitar or something, but like it required a lot of like work for me. And as a kid I wasn't really that determined, so when I got the opportunity to do theater, that was like, this is the closest thing to being on stage and performing and singing and stuff. So I'm like, bet I'm gonna do this. I really very quickly fell in love with it. So when I went to college, I studied theater as a minor, um, and really at that point, I started kind of really, I guess, really diving into the concepts of theater and like understanding like performance methods and different things like that. Um, and then of course I was always trained in Chicano theater, right, and more like a carpa style. I guess if you had to compare it to a European style, it's kind of like what is it? Comedia del arte is what the style is, and it's really much clown like, and it's like, really with your body, and it's
yeah, yeah,
because you're performing in the fields, right, or because you're performing in street performances and stuff like that, so you have to kind of exaggerate and be real physical. So I think like at some point when I graduated college, I got signed to an agency, and I'm still with the agency. The Radical Artist Agency it's based here in Denver. And I started realizing that that it was hard to get cast in things, man. Most folks, they weren't writing things for me. You know what I mean? I got cast in commercials, and ironically, like most of the things that I played were like Bob's or like Rob's and things like that. Um, but it there's so many brown actors here that like it's very hard to find any work. It's very difficult. No one's really writing for it, and if you are getting booked, it's in Spanish, right? Luckily, I speak fluent Spanish as well, but for other actors, that becomes very limited. My point that I'm trying to make here is I got tired of waiting around, brother, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna write my own scripts. I'm gonna write my own monologues. And oftentimes that was looked down upon, right? Like, oh, you think you're tight? Like, you're gonna come in here and audition with your own monologue.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't tell folks. I would just be like, I'm just not gonna say nothing, and I'm just gonna read it. And who's the author? Oh, it's a local author. I would just say, or I would just be like, Jozer. His name is Jozer, and my real name is Jose. So in my resume it says Jose. So I think most folks didn't even connect it. Like they didn't even realize that it was me. So yeah, so that's how I kind of like started trying to
Yeah.
bridge that, like how can I kind of write some sort of performance piece that's kind of theatrical, but also like I don't have to worry about saying their words, right? I don't have to worry about saying it in their own style. And so really it became like the most freeing format for me, because I didn't have to follow a specific structure. I didn't have to follow like a almost like in hip hop, of course the cadence aspect of it, or like the bars and the syllable count. Like I didn't really have to do any of that. At the same time, I didn't even have to speak like they wanted me to speak. Certain characters demand a very certain kind of speech, or even like they might ask for a specific accent. Like I know that we did a play out there in LA, and we had to do a Honduran or a Central American accent, right? And you know how it is, man. We're Mexican. Like that's very it. You might not know if you're an Anglo person, but like it's very different Spanish, right? Like
Yeah.
oye maje, right? We don't really say that in Mexico, or we don't say sentate or cállate, right? We say cállate, right?
Yeah, it's
Siéntate.
more like more stretched.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
like it's a little easier to understand. Honestly, it's like
It is actually
yeah.
a
But anyways,
little less aggro, a little less.
right. But you have to learn all those things, master all those things, and I think with poetry, it was really liberating because I could just speak like I wanted to speak. I can kind of do whatever I wanted, but at the same time, use all of those tools. And yeah, and once you started competing, it was really easy. Like when you hear 12 poets in a row, it's really easy for all of the poems to blend in and become one poem. And so like if you want to stand out, you have to kind of have something to offer, right? And so if you really have like really unique metaphors and like punchlines, or you're a really good performer, and I think if you can kind of match both of those things, you can kind of stick in people's minds a little bit better. They'll remember your poem a little bit better, and it might score you a little better as well. So I think once I saw that, I started thinking, oh, okay, how can I use the acting to really, really feel and really, really help my poetry be in the presentation aspect of it. But yeah,
Yeah. So whatever happened to the little boy with the dream of becoming a singer in a band? What became of this?
uh, ah, it took a long time, man.
Uh,
Uh, I came back from doing that play in LA, and I realized that some of my buddies had formed a band. It's called Los Mocochetes, and so I came back from LA, and I kind of still with that dream in my mind. I did some hip hop and stuff like that. I did like a few mixtapes, when I was growing up, but I never really got the opportunity to really rock with the band. I always had a DJ and stuff like that. So yeah, so when I came back, I saw that they kind of joined the band, and I was always too scared to do it. I was kind of self conscious about it. But I was like, it's the homies, man. Like I know all these guys, and I felt pretty comfortable. So At the time, I was writing this play called "Grab Your Rocks and Throw," based on the poems from this book, actually. And I wrote a song called Marvin Booker, which is about this man who was murdered here in Denver by the Denver Police Department while he was incarcerated in the city jail. He was I think he was bipolar, and he didn't have his medication, and instead of handling it properly, the police handcuffed him and threw him into the cell, and he broke his nose, and it fractured and went through and punctured into his brain, so he bled out, and it was a brutal story. And then of course the Denver Police Department just kind of pretended like it never happened, and then they did the worst thing handling it. But so I wrote the song, and my friend from the band heard it, right? And finally, eventually, they asked me to join the band, and so I've been rocking with the band now for about. I think I was doing the math. I think I'm coming on 4 years, man. It's been almost 4 years. It's been a long road. We've been discovering ourselves as a band. We've lost a lot of band members. We've gained new band members. We at some point we had like 10 people in the band, and we're back to having five or four people in the band consistently. We're about to release our first album ever. It's coming out. I think this whole virus thing kind of actually allowed us to catch up and do some of the mastering and the editing and things like that. So that's going to be coming out. I'm assuming probably around July. It should be out. We should be ready to launch. Everything should be ready, published, have physical copies, and have it all loaded up on every platform. We have a single out right now on every platform that you can think about music wise. Our single is called Que Viva Revolucion. And we're taking the same concept, of my poetry, and we all kind of have the same kind of political minds and ideologies, and so we really we're taking our music to create a platform to talk about these issues instead of just kind of creating music to dance about. And I think most folks would be intimidated to book a political band, right, or a band that makes political statements, but you know, oftentimes these folks don't even understand what we're saying, because I like to write a lot in Spanglish, and
Yeah,
I think it's almost like an inside joke where if you understand what we said, then you got it, and if you don't, then you think it's really clever and multicultural. uh, hey, whatever, I think one time we did this show, and they came up and asked us what it meant, and so I think once they really found out, they were quite shook. But it's funny, man. It's been really fun. I got the opportunity, of course, to do more writing and more songwriting for the band. And so it it became like it's like a Megatron thing, right? We're all really successful artists when prior to this, but when we united and kind of formed forces, or joined forces, it kind of allowed for something greater to happen. And I think that was kind of like essentially what the Chicano movement was. That it wasn't just one person, right, trying to take the lead, et cetera, et cetera. It was like everybody in this community is a bunch of chingones, and when we gather together, we create greatness. And I think um, that's kind of what we're trying to do, and what the essence of it is. And in our band, the Chicano ideology and culture is very much present. Well, I mean, we not only from our logo, it's literally like an adaptation of the multi face, the tres caras, the indio, the español, and then the chicano, that famous image. Our logo is literally kind of like a variation or a take on that. But also just like in our lyrics and the way that we write the music, it's very much bilingual. It goes back and forth, and we just kind of explore a lot of these concepts of what it is to be a Chicano, or how we describing the Chicano experience, here in Denver. And we did an interview with NPR, and they asked, besides musicians, what do you consider yourselves to be? And I said, in a way, historians, right? Because we're kind of capturing all of this stuff and through our music, and at some point someone's gonna go back and they're gonna say, oh, this song is about the you know all this specific instance or this thing that happened in history, and it's kind of a cool thing, you know, to say, you capture some of the events that happened in your generation, and it's a very like it's a good description or it's a good piece of evidence. Like this is how people felt about this kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is how
Well,
people felt about Trompas and about his administration.
when was the interview?
For the NPR.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that was a while back. We did the Tiny Desk contest I think 2 years
Yeah.
ago, and they really dug our. We made like there's like every state kind of has like the best entries, and then they feature all those, and then you become a part of the tour. So we made it pretty deep into the competition, and because of that, we got the Colorado the Colorado part of the tour, but we got also featured by NPR and CPR as far as like the standouts is what they call it. And so yeah, that was I think it was probably like 2 years ago now. I think because
Is
we
it,
did
so
make
can we find a link to the interview?
ah, I'm sure I could find it somewhere.
If we find it, we'll post it there. If not, we'll post
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the video, and we can post a bunch of videos in this commentary so those watching now or later can visit it. I was gonna ask you, so like, how would you describe the sound of the man? I mean, just artistically, how would you describe like your sound?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I think a big part of our sound is like I think there is such a thing as like the Chicano sound. You know what I mean?
Huh?
Like I think even like war is like a big part of the Chicano style. You know that even though the whole band might have not been Chicano, like it
Yeah,
the essence of it, like we really
yeah,
borrow from that.
the right about the Cisco kid.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like that,
Yeah,
or but like very much like even like Santana or like the guitar licks and the fat bass lines, right? Like we really heavy on those things. But at the same time, we all love like I'm a big hip hop guy. You know what I mean? So I came in and right away we started incorporating more hip hop into the music. We also have a few other cats who are in the band who like freestyle, and we all mess around with hip hop as a format and poetry as well. We had like three poets in the band who are pretty solid, man, and we all been doing poetry for a while. So sometimes we explore poetry with the music as well, but mainly I think we talk about it as like like a Chicano's kitchen. Like like that's what this music style is. It's a Chicano, a jefita or abuelita listening to music on the radio. And I'm saying like Chicano because it's very easy to go from from Cisco Kid to like La Chona. You know what I'm saying? Like it goes like that, or like Dr. Dre comes on, and then La Sonora
yeah,
Dinamita comes on, right? And it's like like this is a
yeah.
crazy playlist, like you
It
got
is.
everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
that's
don't
what we
know.
kind of try to achieve, man, in a way like a melting pot of different cultures that we try to kind of like honor and be like I guess maybe melting pot isn't a great term because they really stand out and like most folks want to stay in one genre. We're trying to see how many genres we can put in one song and them still coexisting and not sounding like what the heck is this? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like Thelonious Monk used to do this where he was just going, man, just like messing
yeah,
around with different concepts and musical like ideas and breaking all the rules, right? And sometimes like if you're a music nerd, you like that and it's like, oh, that's a cool concept. But if you're just a regular listener, you're like, that sounds like this guy's just smacking on the keys, right?
yeah.
And how can you do that and break the rules, but also like, oh, this is still tight, like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I think a big part of it is finding similarities or commonalities within music and the sounds, right? Like
yeah.
a cumbia is not that different than like how Drake raps to a cumbia. Like, why can't I do it? You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
why
Like,
not? Yeah,
and
yeah,
so I think that's kind of like in essence, that's kind of what our sound is trying to do.
yeah, yeah. I think that embrace of just like the big wide world and just like making what you can out of it is it's again the most Chicano Mexican things you do. I
Right.
remember I was at this these they had this breakfast that they everyone invited and I remember listening to music and it's always stuck with me because it went from the Beatles to Parliament to like I think Juan Gabriel or something, and it was just like the most like like this is the wildest playlist. And the
Right.
craziest thing is what you just said about your style and music. That is almost different word choices, but that's the almost the exact same answer that when I asked this dude Ulysses from Ozo Motley. He said
Uh,
almost exactly the same. He said almost exactly the same thing.
that's funny.
Almost
Those are the
exactly.
homies, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he said almost word for. I mean, he said I think he called it Mississauga, but he didn't call it kitchen. But he said everything else you said, just about the combination of sounds. This you bring this to the table, and this one else brings this one to the table, and then
Uh,
we see the table set. You know.
that's funny, man. One of those guys, the lead singer, is actually working on mixing and helping us with mixing and mastering our album. So it's a small world, man. We
It's a
met him
small
up in
Chicano world
Aspen.
after all.
We're like their
Yeah,
little brothers.
yeah, that's wild. That's wild. Um, so we got that. So you did a TED talk. Let's talk about that. What was that? The TEDx or TED? What was that like?
Yeah, this is actually my the third time I've done a TED talk, uh, and this is the one that I felt like I had to kind of take control of the TED talk, right? And I'll be honest, I I've been pretty critical about like the concept of a TED talk in the past, mainly because my experience with it, with like the first time I did the TED talk, they hired me to do this one poem, or and they're not even say hired because they're not paying you anything.
Man,
They asked me to do this one poem with my boy Elijah Lynch, and it was a poem that was featured on HBO for the Brave New Voices competition, um, and it was called Little Feet, and it was about sweatshops and workers. And my mom, like I said, we're from Juarez, so everybody in Juarez works for a maquiladora. You know what I'm saying? And like most folks, they don't really, they've never been in there, right? They don't know what the conditions that these workers are in when they're making the Levi jeans, or in that case over there, there's like Wranglers, or all these different things. Like they never really thought about the conditions, and it's very much like slave conditions. You know what I'm saying? Where you're allowed to go to the bathroom, once in 12 hours. Your lunch break is at, you have to work as all these different crazy things. And the poem was basically about that. And very quickly they realized and that it was kind of too radical for them, even though the concept was radical collaboration. So they took back and they made us. They said, you know what, you guys don't have to do it. We apologize. And it's like, heck no, man. We're gonna take this show. We're gonna do something. Like I don't care what it is. It's a TED talk. You can't really pass that up. You know what I
right,
mean?
right,
So I
right.
was like, we'll do something else. We'll figure it out. And so I was kind of bummed out about that. That they, like, we're talking about hours before the show that they pulled the poem. And then the same thing happened again the next time I did it, right? And they again, mic check the day before, right? They didn't really do their research that well, and they asked for the wrong poem, man. And this one was a group poem, so it wasn't just like I had to reread another poem. This time it was a three-piece poem with
Yeah,
homegirl Tolu and my homie Franklin Cruz from the Slam Nuba team, and they changed it up on me. So this time I was like, I'm only gonna do it if y'all promise me, one, no changes, right? I get to choose what poems I read. Right? You don't have any say on what poems I'm gonna read. Like
yeah,
I get to choose it, and you have to book my band too. And so I
yeah.
got him, man.
You got him. Yeah, that's dope, man.
It
I
was
mean, that's the way you
cool.
got to do it, though. That's the way you got to do it.
Yeah,
Like I don't know if you were following this whole thing that happened with the publication, this book American Dirt. Did you see that? And Oprah put it on the book club, and it was like this like really just horrible
Yeah.
book. Right?
Right. Right.
And so there was a big fight back, and it was led by first there was an article by Miriam Gerber that went viral, and then after that, her Miriam, Roberto Lovato, and David Bowles they all went, and also Matt Nelson he they also went. They went and they went to New York, and they had the big protest. They got McMillan, and they got him at the table, and they pressured him, and that was a great victory in a certain way. But I think in a lot of ways that's got that them doing that, or the thing you're describing with Ted, and that's the kind of stuff we got to do. We got to bend them. We got to make them do. We got to fight back, right? But we also do got to do the other stuff you've been doing, which is building outside of them. I mean, we got to build our own networks so that the next generation after us and the generation after them have platforms the size of Ted, the size of McMillan, the size of that, right? And that's the work we got to plant today that we may not even see the benefit from, but the future
Right.
generations will, because otherwise we're always going to be censored. We're always going to be like this much, but not that, this, but that. And then when they do want our story told on a national stage, they're going to either get a white person to do it, or they're going to get one of us who have no dignity to do it, right? They're going to get one of us who will say the thing they want us to, they want said to do it, right? And then we're going to be sitting around just happy to see a brown face talking on television that will
Yeah.
accept any kind of bullshit that comes out of that brown person's mouth, right? And so
That's
like
deep.
that's what happens when they have control, right? When they have control, they're going to say what they want. They're going to say it, or they're going to have one of us say it, right? Um, so a lot of what you're doing in creating these things outside of them is what's necessary, and also like getting them in a position where they're kind of dependent on you, right? Because you go first year, that's your splash. Second year, now all of a sudden you're kind of like you're a draw for them, right? We're bringing back Hoser. Remember Hoser? Hoser's great. Remember Hoser? Yeah, yeah. Everyone's like, oh yeah, we love Hoser, right? So now all of a sudden everyone at TED loves Hoser. Everyone at TED Colorado loves Hoser, right? So the third time, now Hoser can make demands, right? So that kind of stuff is very important that we do things like that, but it's also important that we build outside of them.
Yeah, and you know what? When you go, first of all, the TED event is incredible, man. It is like it's a sellout every single time, right? These cats they do about 3 events a year, man. Like 3 events, huge, enormous events, right? You're talking about like 14,000, 15,000 people. They sell it out every single time. They have a really cool setup where it's like it's in a really central location here in the city. And the theater is like one of the most beautiful theaters in the city as well. It's just really, it's a really cool thing. And then, beyond that, like you get to be backstage and you like see all of these amazing, extremely famous artists on the walls, who have like performed there, and like to know that your name and your picture is gonna be up there, like that's kind of tight. They make you feel incredible, and they make you feel like special for that one day, right? You feel like, oh my god, I made it. It's a cool event, but I think for me it inspired me to be like tight. Like now I know what it's supposed to look like, right? Like this is what we aim for, and surpass if you needed to, right? But like you know, if you perform at like these tiny clubs the whole time, then that you think that's the norm, you know what I'm saying? And then like you start pushing into these huge levels, and you're like, whoa, like this is what we're supposed to be. And when we got the band in there, everybody was, there was a few people who were kind of bummed because it was like we only had 2 songs, right? And it was very much like there, it wasn't like we play at bars and venues, and like some you can kind of be late sometimes if you wanted to, or like
Yeah,
no
yeah,
one's gonna trip. Like, nah, this
yeah.
is a on time. Like we're live and like all of these things. So like they were a little bit shook, and but once they got on the stage, it was like, whoa, man! Like this is what it's supposed to feel like. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Right? It reaffirms you, and it kind of allows you to feel confident about your work. Right? And the craziest part is, man, like. Uh, the poems that I did on TED, the first one is called "You Are Not the Father," which is about Christopher Columbus, and like it starts with a quote from Maury, and you are not the father, it's hilarious, but like
Yeah.
it's a political statement, right? And I also talk about Standing Rock in that poem, right? And we talk about like respecting Native Americans and like how the treatment of Native Americans and the history of Native American people in in this continent, but especially in this country. And then we also talk about the next poem was about my grandmother who passed away, a week before the event. And so, the the whole idea of a strong, powerful Mexicana woman, right? For that, like to be featured and highlighted on one of the biggest platforms that we have, in our city was really cool. And then the first song we did as a band, the first line is "Abajo con Donald Trump," like, like I was like, oh man, I'm gonna try to sneak it in, right? But like, I have a feeling that they're gonna catch it and they're gonna be like, sorry, bro, we cannot do that song. Like, I understand that we like agreed with you, but like, you can't say, screw the president, on the platform, like, and they didn't catch it, bro. And so they,
That's Spanglish.
it's
That's
Spanglish,
yeah,
bro.
yeah. That's what
Everybody said abajo, abajo. They didn't even know what they were saying, but they did it. Yeah, it was
oh,
awesome.
that's funny.
I was like, hey, in a way, it's a big f you to and we said what we wanted to say, and it might not have gone viral right now, but I think like if we continue to have this success, like later on, people are gonna look at that and be like, these fools were flipping the president off since the first day. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
they haven't been holding back, so it'll be a cool gem to have later on, man. But at the end of the day, we appreciate the platform, and it was a great experience, But like you said, I think that it kind of motivates everybody to keep creating and keep building our own networks and start featuring our own people. I think think about it, man. Most of these folks that are going viral on these, are people of color, and they're like really fascinated by our stories, and it's not like they're not making hundreds and thousands of dollars off of this. They're charging fees, and we can do that too. We can. Why didn't we do this in the first place? You know what I mean? But yeah, it's been nuts. It's been kind of crazy. It's been interesting to see like what talks are really successful and which ones are not. And it's been also interesting to be able to share this with fans and folks, friends, family. Um, it. I think a lot of people are proud of the work, and I think that I'm extremely proud of it. And I'm excited to see kind of like most importantly what other opportunities it brings along, because that's the biggest thing. I think someone said, if you have a good TED talk, you might not make any money that day, but you can make up to $10,000 in one show, and I know what that's like. Just being seen on one platform can really do lead to the other opportunities. Not they're not granted, but I'm confident in my abilities to convince somebody that I'm worth that money, But yeah, man. So I'm excited to see what that brings, and how much more opportunities it can provide for me and the band.
I mean, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. So any final plugs? Any things that you want people to check out? No. Where can they find your books? Where can they find your CD, the band CDs? Where can
Yeah,
they
for
find
sure.
out more about where can they find out more about the so teatro so they can support, and especially right now when everything's shut down. I know it's probably got some fundraisers going or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. We as far as the books, we I think I produced two different books. At some point, we sold out, and so I probably have like 10 books left for my own personal chapbook
Yeah,
collection.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'll be doing some reprinting probably in a few months. But yeah, if anyone wants to buy a book, hit me up. You can find me on Facebook. At Jozer Guerrero. You can order a book there. Also, um, you can hit me up on my personal email is
Yeah, yeah.
JOZERG7. Sorry, go ahead.
You know this kid JD Garza?
No, I don't think so.
He's saying shout out to Enrique Story and Su Teatro.
Oh yeah. JD, yeah.
Yeah, JD,
Uh,
he's supposed to bring me out to the campus. Let's do a show together.
let's do it. That'd be
Let's do it.
tight.
Yeah, get in
Enrique
JD's ear. I mean,
Journey.
it's not his fault. I mean, obviously it's a coronavirus. So I mean, but like, me and JD, we met at Encore. So I'm supposed to come out to Denver. But let's do a show together, man. Can you like get in his ear? Like, let's make sure this happens.
Yeah, for sure.
All next year.
Um, yeah, right.
Shout out to
Let's
JD.
do it. But yeah, shout out to Su Teatro as well. Like you said, Su Teatro is pretty easy to find online. But if you need, suteatro.org is the website. Like I said, we have hella content still coming out right now, and we figured out the transition was pretty smooth. Our staff kind of got together, and they were like, you know what, we don't have to stop any of this, because we have 3 festivals that are coming up. The music festival might be a little bit hard to pull off, and we're hoping that we can be back into it amongst people by then. But right now, like I said, the film festival just finished up. We have the word festival happening, so definitely tune in to Su Teatro. We're doing a lot of readings through Zoom and through different things like that, script readings, and basically this festival is mainly stage readings, and so that it worked perfectly. I got to do 2 readings yesterday from El Teatro Campesino. Actually, it was the one play called Los Vendidos, which is a classic.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
PBS picked that up, and they made a whole little film about that on PBS. But also Dos Caras del Patroncito, and so I got to be in both those readings, and that was pretty cool. And then we'll be doing some more readings. I'm actually directing a reading of my own show called The Chosen One, which is it's a play about a young kid who named Descalipoca, whose parents are taken by ICE. And in our story, ICE is led by an evil man by the name of Mr. Trompas. And so basically, Tezcatlipoca and his grandmother and his uncle have to kind of discover his ancestral powers, right? And these powers are based on, very is real things that we need as kids, right? For example, the ability to stop time and think, right? And make a rational decision, or the ability to to think ahead and what consequences can happen if you make this choice, or the ability, um, I mean, like strength, and like the warrior strength and warrior courage. So they have to kind of figure out a way to unleash those ancestral powers to defeat Mr. Trompas and free all the parents in the city, which have been taken by the ICE organization. It's very much a metaphor of what's happening right now, but it was written as kind of a family show, so that both parents and young people can be in the same room at once and laugh about this. But also, there's a scene in there where we throw bean bags that are shaped like hearts, and we throw them out into the audience so that the audience can throw them into at the actors, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's a fun, engaging show. But we're gonna do that reading
yeah.
in a few weeks here at Su Teatro, and so yeah, definitely check that out, suteatro.org. And the
Yeah.
last thing I want to plug is this thing called the Digital Slam. Denver Digital Slam. It's a project that I started a few weeks ago. We're working with this platform called We Are Denver, which is basically just get 24 hours of content of artists from the city who are trying to still kind of make a living, but unfortunately all our shows got canceled. So what folks are doing is they're submitting videos of their performances with their Venmo and Cash App, accounts underneath, and basically with this platform, they aired on television in a few channels, and they also on live on IG and Facebook and et cetera, et cetera. So we created a slam for that. It's coming down. We're featuring a few. With this first round, we're featuring 12 poets from the city. Our next step is to kind of reach out and be a little bit more regional, and include I guess, some cities from Maslan, and then from then we'll be moving on and try to include, New York, Florida, Chicago, some of these major cities from all over. Try to have a national digital slam and see how that goes. But for now, we're starting off with the Denver Digital Slam, and that's coming out April 26th. Um, and that's exciting. Denver Digital Slam, you can look it up on Facebook. There's an event pages as well. We're excited about that. It should be cool, and it's a good opportunity for folks to continue to create and also to still get paid. The whole thing with We Are Denver is every cent that gets brought into the We Are Denver platform or sent to them as far as donations or payment for folks to watch is split amongst all the artists evenly. And that might not mean a lot of money, but it's pretty cool because some artists' work is featured every single day, right? And so
Yeah,
like if it's getting it every single day, it's adding up, and it's a really cool platform, and it's kind of like the whole city decided to come and join forces on this thing and see how we can help each other continue to make money. And Su Teatro is also doing a drop a peso in the bucket campaign, to help different artists or anyone who's ever been to Su Teatro, has performed at Su Teatro, or has ever contributed as part of our company can apply for this grant, and it's kind of like a relief fund, and it's really cool, man. It's interesting to see how our community is coming together. So definitely support our community. Check out the Digital Slam and everything else, and appreciate you for this platform, man. Hope folks out in LA are doing good.
yeah. It's people are a little panicked, but I mean that's kind of all across the country. But you know, I think that people have been pretty good about staying inside. I think a lot of people think that oh my God, I saw someone I don't know what, but I think that overall, like most people are complying, most people are just whatever. So it's not nearly as bad as it looked like it was going to be. You know.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit of a relief. You can't be too lackadaisical or something like that. You can't be. You got to take this seriously and do the right thing. But I think in many ways, uh, most people did the right thing, and because most people did the right thing, it's not as bad as it looked like it was going to be. So
All right.
it's good. It's good. Last thing, man, I gotta say, man, you are a spoonful of Spanglish azúcar, man. You slip it in there, man. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your artistry and your ability to get these messages in with like when people maybe not expect it, right? They're expecting a children. They think it's a children's show, and it is a children's show, and you meet the qualifications, do what you're supposed to do, but you also give them a message. They're here to dance, and you provide music they can dance to, but you also give them a message. So, you're really doing some amazing work, and I'm really I'm proud to know you.
Thank you, brother. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, check
Yeah,
out losmongochetes.com too. That's the band's website. You
yeah,
can
yeah.
find merch and everything on there too. So
We'll put all the links in.
appreciate you, man.
We'll put the links in for the book. Put the links in for the band. Put the links in for the slam. Put the links in for the theater. We'll put them all in. We'll put them all down here in the
Right
discussion
on.
thread. Talk soon, brother.
Right on, man. Appreciate y'all. Be safe. Peace.